Do you ever wonder why it seems like some guys can literally eat whatever they want and never gain fat? Meanwhile, if you even sniff a donut, it's going straight to your belly. The reason for this is going to be a faster metabolism. I'm going to tell you why this is going to happen and how you can fix your slow metabolism in 3 simple steps. So stay tuned in this video. What's going on, guys? Rich here from Fit Fusion Brotherhood. In today's video, like I kind of mentioned, we're going to talk about that annoying guy, all right? He can eat whatever he wants, no matter what he eats, no matter what he kind of tosses in. He always stays lean, but you're dieting down, you're trying to do everything you can, but you still can't get rid of those last 10 to 30 pounds of stubborn belly fat. After this video today, it's going to make 100% sense why this is happening and how you can fix it. That's the good news. So I'm going to tell you how to fix this based on 3 simple steps. So make sure you stay tuned at the end of this video. So I remember we had one client, I believe it was Dave. Yeah, this is Dave. This is like probably a year back now. He always complained to me. Basically exactly what I said to you. He's like, man, why do some people just like eat whatever they want and they never gain fat? Meanwhile, I'm just like cutting my calories hard. I'm doing a ton of cardio. I'm working hard at the gym, but I can't get rid of that fat. We're going to talk about why this is happening, but the first thing I really need to explain is what metabolism is to you, because maybe you've heard the word metabolism or basal metabolic rate. You kind of know what it is, but maybe you don't at the same time. It's very important you understand this concept. That way, what I teach you in this video, you're like, oh man, like now this makes sense why we need to focus on the 65 to 70% of metabolism, which we're gonna discuss right now. So metabolism, the way I kind of break it down in terms of understanding this is think of it as how many calories you're burning in a given day. And maybe you've heard this term, total daily energy expenditure. So now what makes up how many calories you burn in a given day? And I think this is where sometimes we get it backwards. So maybe you heard the term BMR, so basal metabolic rates. BMR is going to make up about 65 to 70% of how many calories we burn in a given day. I'm going to explain what this means here in just 1 minute. The second thing is going to be NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis. This makes about 10 to 15% of how many calories we burn in a given day. And this is an important one, and I'm going to explain this in a minute. Third one's gonna be your thermic effect of food, which is about 5 to 10% of how many calories you burn in a given day. And the fourth one is exercise. Yes, that's probably the last and the least most important thing, and that makes about 5 to 10% of how many calories we burn in a given day. Okay, so now that we know those 4 things, what are they? What does it even mean, right? So BMR, your basal metabolic rate, what that basically means is if you literally just like laid on a bed and you did nothing all day, you didn't fidget, you're basically in a coma. It's basically how many calories you would burn just like not even moving essentially. So it's kind of what keeps the lights on, in your body. So a few factors that can make a higher basal metabolic rate, because obviously we want that number higher, so we burn more calories, right? It's weight loss is calories in, calories out. The higher the calories out is, the easier it's gonna be to lose fat. Muscle obviously plays a role. Age a little bit, not as much as we thought. Males typically have a higher BMR than females. Stress can negatively impact it. If you have like a thyroid issue, it can negatively impact it. So there's certain factors that, are going to determine how fast your BMR is, but muscle, it definitely is a big one, and we're going to get to that here in just a few minutes. The second thing I said is that NEAT, so non-exercise activity thermogenesis. This is like involuntary movements. So look at me right now, right? When I'm talking, I'm not like move your right hand, move your left hand. I'm just kind of like doing it because I'm Italian, I'm a hand talker. So I like to fidget a lot when I talk. And this is gonna make about 10 to 15% of how many calories you burn in a given day. It's that involuntary movement. And I'm gonna tell you a cool little study on this after, and it's actually really interesting. The third thing, like I said, is the thermic effect of food. It's 5 to 10%. The cool part about this is the higher protein you have, the more calories your body's going to take to actually digest that protein. So for example, protein ends up burning about, your body kind of burns about 25 to 30% of how many calories you take in for protein. So meaning if you have 100 calories in a pure protein, your body's gonna burn about 25 to 30 calories of that, which is a pretty high number, right? So if you have 100 calories straight protein, you're only taking about 70 to 75 calories of that. The second thing is gonna be carbs, which is about 5 to 10%, depending. And the third one's fat, which is kind of more that 0 to 5%. So you can see right off the bat right there, if you have higher protein compared to higher fat, you're gonna actually burn more calories in a given day. Now, this is a big number, no, but it still makes up about 5 to 10%, again, of how many calories we burn in a day. And the fourth thing is exercise, right? So how much you're walking, your cardio, your weightlifting, if you're doing boxing, playing hockey, whatever it might be, that's gonna make up 5 to 10% of how many calories you burn in a given day. Pretty low number, right? And I've spoke about this in the past. So what do a lot of guys do that kind of get it backwards in terms of metabolism? There's two things we do typically wrong. Number one, we focus on the 5 to 10%, right? So we do a lot of cardio, we do a lot of CrossFit, high intensity interval training, tons of burpees. We're kind of chasing the sweat, we're chasing the burn. Hopefully you're gonna see that's probably a bit of a backwards approach because it only makes up that small number. The second thing we typically do is we starve ourselves. So if you're trying to lose those last 10 to 30 pounds of stubborn belly fat, the last thing you want to do is starve yourself. Do you remember when I kind of talked about at the beginning, your BMR, so your basal metabolic rate, makes up 65 to 70% of how many calories you burn in a given day, and muscle is a big factor in that? Well, if you starve yourself, yeah, you're gonna lose a shitload of weight, but you're also gonna lose a lot of muscle at the same time. So that's why you gotta reverse think this. You gotta be like, okay, maybe the best thing to do is not focus on burning calories and starve myself, because if you've done that in the past, or maybe you're thinking about doing that, all you're gonna do is, yes, you're gonna lose weight, maybe short term, but it's gonna set yourself up for a weight regain, and you're just gonna kind of look a little bit flabby because you're not gonna retain your muscle, and it's gonna make burning calories harder in the long run. So now that you know what metabolism is, I'm gonna tell you how to fix this in 3 simple steps, and we're gonna dive right into it. Tip number 1, dial in your calories and dial in your protein. Now this might seem obvious, but most guys, at least that I coach or have coached, the calories aren't a problem for some of us. Like we kind of like dial it in, it's pretty good. Where we don't really dial it in is the protein. And protein kind of goes hand in hand, of course, with weight training. If we don't have enough protein and we're not weight training, what's gonna happen is, we're gonna impact your BMR, our muscle's gonna go down. I just talked about that. I'm not gonna go down that same road. What I always say is it's not about eating healthy, it's about eating right. Because healthy could mean super low calories, it could be like lots of fruits, could be nuts, it could be cleanses. Like what do you consider healthy? It's not about that in terms of losing stubborn belly fat. It's about eating the right foods by having the right amount of calories and the right amount of protein. In terms of your protein, I'm not gonna get too specific on it, but body weight times 0.8 is a good rule of thumb. So if you weigh 200 pounds, you times by 0.8, you'd wanna try to aim for 160 grams per day, give or take. But like I said, make sure you get this part dialed in the protein. More often than not, I find most men neglect this. They can cut calories for a little bit, everything's going well, but then once they lose the fat, they also lose the muscle. And the analogy, or at least the reference I like to give is, you don't want to look like a melted candle, right? Because if you just have like low calories, low protein, not enough weight training, or at least proper weight training, you're gonna get melted candle. Like you're gonna lose fat and you're gonna lose weight, but half that's gonna be muscle, and that's the last thing you wanna do. And that's gonna mess up your metabolism even more. So your goal, of course, is lose as much fat as we can in a fat loss phase, but you wanna retain as much muscle as you can as well. So that's number 1, make sure your calories and your protein are dialed in, and make sure you remember that protein and make sure you're not going super low on it. Number 2, train the right way. I just kind of rambled on about how exercise only makes about 5 to 10% of how many calories we're burning in a given day. So your efforts should not be focused on that 5 to 10%. You shouldn't be chasing the burn, you shouldn't be chasing that sweat. If you do that, it's a backwards approach, respectfully speaking. What you want to do is focus on training smart and obviously focus on proper weight training. Again, the more muscle you have, the more it's going to impact your basal metabolic rate. The analogy I like to give, if you're focusing on burning calories, but you don't have the right systems in play in terms of at least keeping your muscle in a fat loss phase, it's like in a relationship. You do something small for your partner, but you're missing like the big 3. Right? So maybe like you take out the trash bag and like, it's okay, it's a cool little gesture, but you're not loyal, you're not trustworthy, and you're not communicating, and you're wondering like, why is my relationship working? Well, it's the same thing with your metabolism, your BMR. If you're just focused on that small thing, which is burning calories, but you don't have your protein, you don't have your calories, you don't have your weight training dialed in, then it doesn't really matter if you quote unquote took out the trash, because if you're neglecting the other big 3, then you're just not gonna be successful in your journey. So tip number 2, make sure you're training the right way. And this is like 4 to 5 times a week. You want to be strength training, even 4 times is plenty enough. And make sure you're focused on that quality over quantity. And if you do want more information on this, I'll drop a link below. I have free resources in terms of how you can set up your workouts, do this the right way. To keep this video short, we'll stop right there. I don't want to elaborate too much, But just make sure, guys, you're not focused on the burning calories. You're training the right way and the smart way. Remember that relationship analogy. Tip number 3. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit more. I talked about protein, but I'm going to kind of tie it back into more importantly here. Focus on protein and your NEAT, so your non-exercise activity thermogenesis, right? Remember I said that makes about 10 to 15% of how many calories you burn in a given day, and the protein, or say the thermic effective food, is about 5 to 10%. So right there, you're kind of talking about potentially 25% of your calories burned through eating enough protein and eating the right foods, of course, and of course, just making sure you're having enough energy to move subconsciously. Now, let me kind of tie this back to NEAT here. You can't voluntarily get higher NEAT levels, right? So I can't be like, oh, my NEAT's high right now. That's gonna be more exercise if you're thinking about moving. NEAT becomes involuntarily, but there's some certain factors that really impact how high your NEAT's gonna be. Number 1, if you're starving yourself, your NEAT levels are gonna drop. That's the interesting part about the body, right? So it's calories in, calories out. If our calories are in, it goes super down. Guess what goes down? Our calories out, because our NEAT. And you probably know what I'm talking about. If you've dieted and if you've crashed calories, you kind of feel like shit, right? Like you're tired all the time, you feel lethargic, your workouts suffer. So the calories in go down, but so the calories out. Now, when the calories up goes increase, we typically move more. There's obviously a fine line. Like if you have if you're slamming Denny's back every meal and your calories out is way more than your calories burned, then obviously you're gonna gain weight. But hopefully you're gonna see that you wanna use food as fuel, and it's not just about crashing calories, because your body will compensate with that. An analogy I like to give as well is like, let's say you're plugging your phone in it's only up to 20%. So you charge your phone in the morning, it's 20%. How long do you think it's gonna last you your phone? Probably not very long, right? It's gonna die pretty fast. The same thing when it comes to your calories and NEAT levels. If you're starving yourself, you're gonna die out fast. You're just simply not gonna move enough. And this is why you need to learn to use food as fuel, because if you don't, you're gonna feel sluggish, you're gonna lose muscle, and then next thing you know, you have a slow metabolism, and you're like, is it my genetics? No matter what I do, I just can't lose that fat. Well, if you focus on the right things, I guarantee you, your metabolism is going to speed up, and you're going to think like, okay, maybe it's not my metabolism, it's not my age, I can actually do this. You see results, you get more confidence. So think of it that way. Hope it makes sense. I got to recap here. What I want you to focus on in terms of increasing your metabolism, you want to focus on the BMR, the protein, and then your NEAT levels. And then NEAT levels are gonna be directly impacted by how many calories you're taking in and even how much protein you're taking in to a certain degree. So your BMR, right? We're focused on building muscle the best we can, or at least maintain our muscle in the fat loss phase. We wanna make sure we're not starving ourselves. What that's gonna do is if we have enough calories, we're gonna move more subconsciously, which is gonna increase our NEAT levels, which increase our metabolism. And if we have enough protein, remember that thermic effect of food, we're gonna burn about 25 to 30% of how many calories we're taking in with the protein. So higher protein, maintain our muscle mass. What that's gonna do is basically help us move more and also just burn more calories through eating, because of the thermic effect of food of protein, and obviously your BMR will be increased on top of that. Hope that makes sense. If you want more info on the workouts, in terms of I kind of talked about training the right way. I don't want to get too specific because I could probably spend an hour teaching on that. I'll just drop a link below. You can access it. It tells you basically a free week of workouts. I don't know if I said that right. And it kind of tells you how to progress it, what to do. And there's some great tips you can kind of follow in terms of set up a proper workout structure. That way you can maintain your muscle mass, build muscle, have a fast metabolism, and you don't have to worry about starving yourself or doing even any sort of gimmick restricted diets. Thanks for watching. A bit of a long video, but I hope you enjoyed. We'll talk soon.